Welcome to an SFB Addict video.
Alright, we have a SFB battle here between a Romulan and a Federation. So basically a couple of destroyers. A quick little game. I again tried to use OBS Studio to record the audio, but I still didn't get the setting properly. So I'm again doing the audio for the game after the fact. This game is basically a variant of SH56. You take a couple of ships, you don't know exactly which one you have, or your opponent doesn't know exactly which one you have until you reach range 14, at which point the specific ship is revealed, because at that point you can distinguish what weapons are on the ship. So you might have a Federation DDL, or you might have a Federation DDG, or a Federation DD. You don't know until you reach range 14. And the same thing with the Romulan here. It's a basic Skyhawk hull, but you don't know exactly which variant. So it might be a Skyhawk leader, it might just be the plain generic Skyhawk. Now in this particular game, the Romulan is not using the cloaking device. Not paid for. And it's an SKA, SKK, and SKL as the three Skyhawks that it could be. Romulan coming in speed 16. Or speed 15 actually. And both are coming at weapon status 3. ECM 5, ECCM 1 on the Romulan. And we start calling impulses. And basically we just zoom in close until we reach range 14 or so, and then start maneuvering from there. So not an awful lot going on the first turn. And the Federation here is speed 16. Still trying to figure out a better way to set up the map for doing the videos and still showing everything. This seems to be the more optimum way of doing it. Okay, at this point I've changed the video playback to 200%, so it'll zip through a little bit faster here. The next video I do figure out how to do the OBS audio recording properly. Although I don't know whether or not it's going to be considered a success or not. You do tend to get all the background noise that's going on in your opponent's place of residence kind of thing. So ships are still a fair distance out, 25 hectares or so. So both players here are a little bit rusty. Okay, so we reach range 16, so this is the point where attack and tell rules say that the ships can start distinguishing one type of weapon from another. So here's where the Romulan can distinguish that the Federation has X number of torpedoes versus X number of plasma torpedoes. So here the Romulan is being revealed to be a Skyhawk with 2 F-torps and 6 phaser 1s, coming up against the Federation destroyer with 2 F-torps and 2 photons and 6 phaser 1s. So the Romulan here is outgunned. Okay, waiting for the Federation player to write in their plasma information, real or fake. Romulan's doing the same thing using a card. Federation is doing the same thing using the sequence of play orders, delayed tab. I find it a little bit easier to use the cards. So it's Impulse 24, first turn. This is the part of the tedious part of the game sometimes, is waiting for things to be documented what they are. And this is a playback at 200%. So it's actually taking twice as long as this in real life. Here the player was attempting to use the cards, I guess, and then changes course and decides to use the sequence of play orders to record them. There we go. Created a message, turn 1 plus 24. Here we're waiting for the Federation player to place their plasma on the board in the direction that it's being launched in. Right now it's facing direction A, which it can't legally do. Apparently he had his overlay map turned on and wasn't unable to get to the plasmas to do that, so we had a little bit of a discussion on what was going on, etc. Okay, plasma is now oriented properly. Apparently that is 2 plasma torpedoes. I think here we're asking the Federation player to label it as 2 torpedoes. It's okay to use one counter to represent multiple things. You just have to make sure you've got it labeled as such. Otherwise, it's better to actually put 2 counters on the map. Now, the plasma is not labeled as turn 1 impulse 24 because his written order is, although it would be helpful to anybody just visually looking at it to know what the turn impulse of launch is by having it labeled on the counter. So as you can see, when you look at that plasma card for the Romulan, you can immediately tell turn 1 impulse 24. Okay, so here the Romulan is going to decide to fire at the Fed. It does have 6 phaser 1s after all. 9 to 15 is its engagement bracket. Normally the Romulan player doesn't do narrow salvos, but decides to try it out. We're about to use the range, then realize, hey, we got electronic warfare. So we can't do that, and we're narrow salvoing, so yeah, you got to actually roll the single die. And we roll a 4, and that's a miss from all of them. And this is where the Romulan made a mistake. Instead of turning up, he should have turned down. Romulan is now closing distance with the plasmas, whereas the Fed's running away. In a few minutes here, the Romulan actually removes the plasma from the board because there's no sense in keeping it on the board since the Fed's so far away. And here the Romulan's kind of figuring out, oh wait, those close a little bit faster than they kind of expected them to. They're a little bit stronger than we thought they were. And a turn, energy allocation. Okay, bumps playback speed up to 300% here, at least until we get some action out of the energy allocation. Okay, so we got playback at 300%. We're doing energy allocation. Again, we're commenting on the game after the fact. So here the Romulans deciding how they're going to handle the torpedoes. Basically, they decide to reinforce. They contemplate doing electronics to shift the plasmas and realize I don't have anywhere near enough power. So they decide to go on reinforcement, slow down. So the Romulans holding 2 suicides and arming a 3rd. Now, since the Federation's a fair distance away and appears to be running away, this doesn't seem to be that risky of a strategy. So the Romulans going to come in speed 16, slap down to 8, slap down to 4 and 0 kind of thing. Now the Federation this turn is actually running really efficient. Their plasmas are being held, or armed, with 1 point each, but their photons are being held. Federation ships coming in at speed 20. Romulan speed 16. Romulan fires on the plasmas. So plasmas reach 15 for a total of 30. Rom has 9 reinforcement, has fired -4 off of each torpedo. Both are real. Dumping in battery. Getting 8 damage. There may or may not have been a mistake here on how many battery the Romulan actually has. Battery discharged 5? Yeah, okay, so they think they have 5 battery. I can't remember if that's true or not. There was another game where we thought we had 4, I think, and it ended up with realizing it was only 2. Yeah, no, I think the Romulan here has 5. So no mistake on the battery. So 2 real torpedoes only doing 8 damage to the number 1. That's not that bad. So if the Federation does not do an HED and come straight back at the Romulan's got a little bit of time here and can recover and isn't really that badly damaged. It's lost a little bit of their primary battle shield, but they're still in an okay situation so far. But it all depends on what the Federation does. Basically, the Romulan wants to get from this point of the turn to the end of the turn without having to engage in more combat. And the Federation starts the turn. And again, the Romulan makes another mistake. Instead of turning away, the Romulan again turns towards the Federation. Although, with what's going to happen with their movement, they really don't have much of a choice here, really. If they want their weapons pointing towards the Fed. So the Romulan has now dropped down to speed 8. And then has dropped down to speed 4. Over this amount of time. So they came in speed 16 for the first 3 impulses. Did a mid-turn speed change down to 8. And now on impulse 16 or thereabouts, roughly, they do another one down to speed 4. And unfortunately, the Federation is closing in to do more battle. So the Romulan has 1 plasma torpedo armed on his ship, and he's got no phasers armed, because he had put all his power into reinforcement to keep his shield from being obliterated by 2 plasma torpedoes. So there's not even any power here for electronic warfare. Now this is where the Federation has 2 more heavy weapons, 2 photons. So if one hits, the Romulans, if both hit, the Romulan's pretty much dead. Here the Romulan was supposedly trying to do a calculation, hitting the wrong number on the number pad. Wanted to do percentage and ended up doing a minus. Was taking a look at the BPV values. Waiting on the opponent to actually reveal their order. There you go. And both photons hit. And those are phasers, and for some reason the Romulan player took those as rolls instead of damage. So it's 17 damage, and for some reason was thinking those are rolls and calculated 15 damage. But they catch on here in a moment. Sometimes people can be rather dense. All the Romulan player had to do is read the word damages are instead of rolls are. So now they're catching on that it's 17, not 15. So 47 to a destroyer is going to do internals. 47 to a destroyer that's got a damaged front shield is going to do quite a bit more internals. So 37 inside on a DD. It's only got 2 heavy weapons. So as you can see here, in a moment, the Romulan is going to get nice and toasty. Now as we do up the damage. Again, this is the drawback to doing Vassal, where you have to do the damage manually. So we got a phaser hit. We're using a paint program SSD here that's on a second monitor. Hopefully remember to bring it over and show it to you. Three is a phaser. 5 is a hull. 7's a hull. 4 ends up being a right warp. 2 is a damage control. 6 is an impulse or a hull. 9 left warp. 6 probably an impulsor lab. Shuttle, just lost a suicide that he's trying to hold. Aftall. Scanner track. Phaser. And here's the insult to injury. They lost. He loses a second torpedo. So that ship is toasted. So at that point, the Romulan concedes the battle that they will attempt to disengage as quickly as possible, and the Federation allows them to do so. So here the Federation's 4 heavy weapons did indeed shine against the Romulans' 2 heavy weapons and no cloak. Now the Romulan did actually have a chance. He needed another turn here. So if that Federation had held off the battle a little bit, the Romulan might have been able to approach with 2 armed torpedoes and 3 suicide shuttles, which might have been enough to get point blank somewhere on the Fed. And if the Fed misses with one of the photons, doesn't roll quite as well as they did, the Romulan had a chance. But the way things worked out, no, they didn't.